So the next presentation, Mariia Kurylo, who is the scholar at the Institute of Geology, Kyiv National University, PhD in geology, expert of Ukrainian Geology Union, and national trainer in framework classification of mineral deposits. About prospects of using the international assessment standards in the Ukrainian practice of using the mineral deposits. Thank you and greetings to all the participants and the Union of Geologists for an invitation, for opportunity to talk about this topic as international standards. It's about development of our geology industry in general, because we understand that with these questions are tied directly to opportunities of investment, creating the high-tech facilities that cost quite a lot. And all the geological information that we have, what we have and that we're creating, it has to be clear and understandable, not only to us, it has to be understood to all the stakeholders who are interested in development of our geology. So it's a growth point, it's our national growth point, and within international projects of Geologists Union, we participate the Geological Service of EU, together with our national partners, European partners. Wherever we're designing a lot of tools, the bridging documents, as we know them, so that we all in Europe, and not only in Europe, have to can understand it. So it's a sort of an introduction. So, what are the international standards of assessment? There are many of them. In oil and gas, there are one set of requirements. In the solid fossil fuels and minerals, it's a different one. There are tools that are created as a universal language to make unified all the other tools that historically were well developed. So none of them is better or worse. It's an important conceptual thing to understand, because in our professional environment and production and scientific and regulatory, there are a lot of disputes and disagreements in terms of what is the best system of classification, what is the most acceptable for Ukraine. In the oil and gas industry, they often say, why do we have to use the UN system? And so these arguments are going on for years. I found some solution, and my colleagues in GSU have supported that, because it's not about argument. Because we cannot say what is better or worse. We have our own tradition, we have our own experience, we're implementing our traditions and harmonizing with the international standards. And this is where, that's our benefit, our competitive edge, so to say. I think you agree that it's better to know 5 languages than to know none or just one. So I'm saying it's like speaking English because it's the only language you know, but there's many, the more tools we have accessible to us, the deeper we have our national system implemented. It's very flexible, in fact. And I can say so. And the state service is very flexible. We are trying. We're doing our best to create the best conditions to implement this. So my proposal is to get to understand what standards are suited for which tasks, because there can be different tasks and tools of assessment. So that's the key important thing, and we then have to use it according to our tasks. So we're looking for investors We're increasing the status and maturity of our projects. We want to use the best information, the clear skies standards that include a lot of regional standards for solid fuels. So SPI and PRMS we use for oil and gas. And what's good is that within all those standards, together with UNFC, the standards of the UN standards that we mentioned, they are together forming a lot of new systems, new standards and for projects. I wouldn't say that they are not typical, but mostly it's the renewables for geothermal projects, for pumping CO2 or hydrogen. The new standards are, so to say, united. Nobody is splitting them or trying to make them understandable for everyone. So the diversity goal is because there are a lot of stakeholders using our minerals. So everybody has their own risks and objectives, and they often are on opposite sides. If we talk about local communities, we talk about how they're interested in that. And I believe that all those international standards, so not only assessment, resources, maturity, but these are the tools of subtaining the risks. What else should be improved in the project to achieve between all the stakeholders this situation where it's beneficial for all? So it's a win-win situation. So they give us understanding what's wrong, what's right. If everything is okay with your social license, like in our NFC that is represented in cubes here on slide, earlier there was only economical liability. Now it's environmental, social, and economical viability that are being assessed. And our traditions are, we're trying to simplify them sometimes, but here the international standards can really help us. So if you have deposits, great. If you have even more resources, it's even better. If you have to have social license, you have to have some clear, understandable plan for all the stakeholders of what exactly do you want to do. And using these classification systems, in fact, these environmental, social liabilities, they are in the modifying factor of clear sky. So the resource has to be available. It can be ideal from geological point of view. It can be very economically viable and full of liquidity. But if you don't have access to some various reasons, then we won't be able to move. Move where? Well, all these scales of international standards, they are helping us to understand it. I'm going to speed up. So this is the scale of risks.
Yeah.
The risks that we have and the risks that which we need to be aware of. And then it will become clearer why all of these diversified international standards exist. Some of them exist for investors, others to explain in clear and understandable language to the local population or to other levels of regional stakeholders, for example, to make sure that it's clear not only for subsoil users and geologists for the people of technical preparation, but because you must admit it that most often our mining or geological or technical information that we operate most of the time is not very clear to average people, which is why getting some approvals from them or support is so hard to do. Previously and formerly, it used to be our cutting edge. However, right now we are faced with another challenge. And failing to see it or denying it will cost us a lot. Recently, environmental social governance used to be at the top. And this is not an issue of emissions, although it is included in there. But believe me, this is more to do with the social licenses and the need or a challenge for us to be understandable and comprehensible, not only for our peers and counterparts, but also for our investors who are ready to pay. We must admit it and be mindful of that. We have to be clear and understandable to the people that provide access to the resources via property rights to their land allotments. We must also be aware that these proprietary rights are present everywhere. So this is not only our problem, this is the problem that our Canadian and American counterparts also have to deal with, because they say we explore fantastic deposits, but then we look into the land allotments, which usually are possessed by a lot of people. It's very difficult to understand. We don't have the access to the resource, what to call them. We still call them deposits, reserves. Yet the international standards, there are different opportunities to identify them in different terminology, to show and identify that something can be wrong with the access. The blue graph shows you the range of risks as of last year. This year, some new risks have emerged, which have pushed out different systems and standards, forcing them to amend. You can see capital ranking first, because the question is who's going to pay for it all, for all of these projects of extreme importance. And there are some other items at the top which justify that in subsoil use area, we're dealing with depleted resources. So whatever we do, this resource is going to diminish further, and we have to understand what will happen when the date for the depletion comes completely. Maybe we can extend those terms, who knows. Now, with our European counterparts, we are participating in projects for depleted gas and oil deposits and fields, creating storages. It's very early stage, but this is an extension of the cycle. Therefore, these risks we must be conscious of them. So the goal that we are pursuing is not only to explore a deposit and then to forward it for industrial exploitation and development. There are lots of different challenges that geologists are faced with. At the previous workshop, there was a friend of mine who kept repeating, a geologist is not supposed to be merely a geologist. Yes, he's supposed to be a geologist, but he's faced with a great number of other risks which are impossible to deal with without specialists. Now, we thank Mr. Georgievic, who implemented immediately for us this UNFC. We may agree or disagree. However, now we find ourselves in a state of a much higher state of classification development, because we're used to this three-digit code. But in Italy, which is a witness of our classification being implemented in Europe, still UNFC is a single tool to run all of the databases for deposits and for subsoil facilities. The majority have never seen these three-digit codes, and sometimes it's hard for them to understand how to transit to them. Now we have been operating this experience for 20 years. This classification has been used for 20 years in our country. We're used to it. It's clear to us. We are disseminating our experience, because for other European countries, sometimes it's something like Chinese, So for us, it's usual. It's just another language that we can use to express ourselves fully. And another compliment for our work at the Union of Geologists, at the GSU, and the State Commission on Reserves. Nearly in all of the commissions, we have these bridging documents. It's not a one-page document, but if you want to translate something from Kurylo into UNFC, we have bridging documents. We have comparability of all of the criteria and documents. If we want to transfer or translate our old ABC classifications, this can also be done. The only thing is, everyone agrees, and I think this is about the understanding of geological information. Automatically, it's very hard to do. If we need to verify everything very quickly, we need to understand the limits of this verification. Ideally, we have to consider every facility separately. I simply think that these are different scopes of classification and classification, which one way or another faced in our practice. So sometimes in our investment fund, we have 10 different facilities to choose just one of them, and we are not allowed 5 years to do that. I'm only allowed 1 week to draw my conclusion. The same goes here. Depending on the preconditions of our work and the purposes that we are pursuing, we can apply the suitable, the most appropriate instrument, which will be most fitting and suitable for this particular case. And all of this diversity of international standards, in this case, I'll be talking about just another comparison. And as a conclusion, so they enable us to assess and classify some non-typical facilities. Typical ones are the ones that we are developing. For example, our iron ore deposit with magnite quartzes. It can be easily translated from any standard. And by the way, they have already accumulated technical reports on numerous things and different classification principles. But it's quite another story for us. It's novel for us, but we still have a case when reserves were approved at the National Commission. We took into account all of the standards, both our national and UNFC one, and different classes and categories were approved according to Kurylo template. So if in technical terms you can do it and rationalize that, the Commission will include it. This is our experience, and it's very positive. Look, if we take international standards for investment, Kurylo, JORC, and UNI 143 SPE, PRMS, they, in comparison, it's an important thing to remember. They do not allow us to account for the peculiarities that we have in our resource base, how to keep account of that, how assess facilities which right now are in the temporarily occupied territories or are inaccessible for whatever other reasons. I have already participated in negotiations with different qualified personnel. According to JORCO, NSP, UNI, we cannot consider them at all because this is not an accessible resource for us, so we just exclude them regardless of the degree of their preparation or exploration. NI does not consider them. However, UNFC allows us to classify our information, however, present this as an inaccessible resource. So all of this variety of instruments will be chosen depending on the task, facility, available geological information. So it's an example of a facility which is right now in a temporarily occupied territory. These are rare earth minerals. And another advantage point, it's a possibility with the help of international standards to assess facilities which are unusual for us, not resources, not reserves, but all of it together with the infrastructure, with the project solutions, assessing the entire scope of the project. They can be very much comprehensive, and I have presented here some of the cases that we have discussed with Maxim Olehovich when we have reserves, for example, of gas, some residue of that in the same area, in the same field. There may also be reserves of salt with another degree of exploration, another degree of the project maturity. And at the same time, we can also get some minerals from some byproducts, critical minerals, if their concentrations are sufficient. So thus, in one area, how can we assess all of these things? If I want to do it using our internal instruments, I will have to sit down and do it separately for salt, for byproducts, for different kinds of CRN and CRNN byproducts, and all of these things will have to be done separately. However, international standards allow us to assess that within the scope of one project and see some things which are not cost-effective or include the things that will add efficiency, cost efficiency. So this will contribute to the comprehensive project solution. So I thank you for the opportunity to speak about this topic, and I think that the implementation and proper understanding of all international standards, which are significant for us and allow us to attract investments and have investments not only with the investments, those can be the holders of technologies and various other kinds of support that we can enjoy, will allow us to take advantage of these opportunities. So I'm really supportive of what's taking place in our legal framework, that we have to be able to use them alongside our classifications. It's good. It's no good replacing them with each other because they are varied, and this, which is why they're helpful and useful to us. Thank you for your attention.